6 p.m. Assalamu alaikum. This is Radio Pakistan. The news read by Daman Zaman. The headlines. The President and the Prime Minister have stressed the need for the resolution of humanitarian crisis in occupied Kashmir, which has entered the sixth week. China says Kashmir issue is a dispute left from history and should be resolved peacefully on the basis of the United Nations resolutions. Pakistan has categorically rejected the Indian attempts to portray a totally false impression of normalcy in occupied Kashmir. In occupied Kashmir, strict military siege continues on the 35th consecutive day today as all markets, schools and colleges remain closed and the transport off the road. Naval Day is being observed across the country today to pay homage to the heroes of the 1965 war. The Afghan government has said no peace talks would yield the desired results without its representation. And now the news in detail. Prime Minister Imran Khan says the ongoing curfew, continued lockdown, communications blockade and massive human rights violations in occupied Kashmir have created a dire humanitarian situation which needs to be urgently addressed. He was talking to the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, who called on him in Islamabad today, briefing the Chinese side on the evolving situation in the Indian-occupied Kashmir following New Delhi's unilateral and illegal actions of 5th August. The Prime Minister underscored that the curfew and other restrictions should be immediately lifted. He stressed that in order to deepen the strategic cooperation, Pakistan and China should continue their close coordination and consultation to ensure that peace and stability in the region is maintained. The Prime Minister said CPAC is a project of great national significance that contributes immensely to the revitalization of Pakistan's economy. He reiterated Pakistan's commitment to the timely completion of CPAC projects and highlighted the importance of CPAC authority for speedy execution of CPAC projects. Speaking on the occasion, the visiting dignitary reaffirmed China's support and reiterated opposition to any unilateral action as well as the measures by India that could further complicate the situation. Both the leaders agreed that more high-level exchanges should continue to take place between the two countries to further promote bilateral ties and shared goals of economic development, peace and security across the region. Talking to the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Islamabad today, the President, Dr. Arif Alvi, stressed the need to resolve humanitarian crisis in the Indian-occupied Kashmir on an urgent basis as the inhuman lockdown of the valley entered the sixth week. He said the curfew in occupied Kashmir affecting 9 million people should be lifted to allow the suppressed Kashmiri people meet their very basic needs. The Chinese Foreign Minister reiterated China's support for Pakistan in safeguarding its sovereignty, territorial integrity, independence, and national dignity. China says Kashmir is a dispute left from history which should be resolved peacefully on the basis of the United Nations resolutions over the matter. In a joint press release at the conclusion of the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi's visit to Pakistan today, both the sides agreed to strengthen coordination and cooperation on regional and international affairs. The Chinese side reaffirmed its support for Pakistan in safeguarding its sovereignty, territorial integrity, independence, and national dignity in choosing its development path in the light of its national conditions. The two sides underlined that a peaceful, stable, cooperative, and prosperous South Asia is in the common interest of all the parties. The two sides further agreed to maintain frequent mutual visits and meetings at the leadership level and continue to hold bilateral meetings between their leaders on multilateral occasions. They also agreed to strengthen cooperation on the Afghanistan issue and support the Afghan-led, Afghan-owned peace and reconciliation process. The Foreign Office today summoned the Indian Chasse d'Affaires and categorically rejected the Indian attempts, including the recent briefing by the Indian National Security Advisor seeking to portray a totally false impression of normalcy in Indian-occupied Kashmir. The Director General South Asia and SAARC, Dr. Mohammad Faisal, summoned the Indian envoy and said occupied Kashmir continues to be the largest prison in the world, with the heaviest deployment of Indian occupation forces since the coercive, unilateral, and illegal Indian actions of 5th August 2019. He said the act is aimed at altering the internationally recognized disputed status of occupied Kashmir and changing its demographic structure to preempt the results of a United Nations plebiscite. The Foreign Office said Kashmiri leaders, especially Hurriyat leadership, remain under house arrest and imprisoned. Dr. Mohammad Faisal said, contrary to the Indian claims, use of pellet guns continues in a brutal assault by Indian occupation forces against innocent Kashmiris. He said India has failed to justify why Kashmiris are unable to get in touch with their loved ones through the Iron Curtain forced by India on occupied Kashmir. This is Radio Pakistan. In occupied Kashmir, strict military siege continues on the 35th consecutive day today as all markets, schools and colleges are closed while the transport is off the road. There is no internet service and mobile phone connections are snapped in the Kashmir Valley. The valley has no connection with the rest of the world due to continued blockade and suspension of communication services since 5th of last month. Markets and stores remain closed in a silent form of protest. Nearly all Kashmiri political leadership is under detention and arrest. The curfew and restrictions have also rendered the residents with acute shortage of essential commodities like baby food and life-saving drugs, and hospitals without medicines and surgical equipment. The authorities have also announced that no Muharram procession will be allowed in the occupied territory, fearing that these gatherings could turn into anti-India demonstrations. Member of the Coordination Committee of Human Rights Forum, Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, V.S. Krishna, says the Indian government has committed a constitutional outrage by abrogating Article 370 of its constitution in occupied Kashmir and dividing the territory into two union territories. Addressing a meeting on Kashmir in Yamiganur, he said the lockdown in Indian occupied Kashmir has pushed the Kashmiris to extreme distress. Naval Day was observed across the country today to pay homage to the heroes of 1965 war. In this connection, Pakistan Navy released a special documentary titled Zarb-e-Aab. According to Pakistan Navy spokesperson, the documentary is built on the Special Forces and Marines formed for maritime defense. It fully reflects the operational capabilities of the Special Forces and the Marines. Professional demonstrations are also part of the Marines and the Special Forces' professional competence and risk-taking capabilities. The documentary clearly indicates the commitment and professionalism of the naval officers and their readiness for all kinds of sacrifices to protect their motherland. The Afghan government says no peace talks would yield the desired results without its representation. According to a statement by the Afghan presidential palace, the obstacle in achieving peace in Afghanistan is the continued Taliban-led war and violence. The statement further says peace won't return to Afghanistan unless the Taliban end the killings, accept ceasefire, and initiate direct talks with the Afghan government. The statement came after American President Donald Trump called off the peace talks with the Taliban in the wake of a recent attack in Kabul claimed by the Taliban that killed an American soldier and 11 other people. Iran says the European parties of the 2015 nuclear agreement have failed to fulfill the commitments under the pact. This was stated by the head of the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran, Ali Akbar Swalehi, who held a meeting with the acting Director General of International Atomic Energy Agency, Cornel Faruta, in Tehran today. He said the deal is not a one-way street and Iran will act accordingly by gradually downgrading its commitments. The United States and Turkey have started joint military patrols in northeastern Syria for establishing a safe zone along the Turkey-Syria border. Reports say vehicles with Turkish flags joined those with American flags in Syria's Tel Abyad town. And finally, the weather. Mainly hot and humid weather is expected in the country during the next 24 hours. However, rain is expected at isolated places in Gilgit-Baltistan. And that is the end of this news bulletin. For more news and analyses, log on to our website, radio.gov.pk, and you can also watch the live video streaming of our bulletins on the link, facebook.com/Radio Pakistan News Official.